All right, so today we're diving into something pretty incredible, AI and machine learning and how they're totally changing drug discovery. We've got a bunch of research here, and I got to say, it's pretty mind-blowing, the progress that's being made.
You know, it really wasn't that long ago that the idea of AI designing drugs seemed like, wow, straight out of science fiction. But the reality is, it's happening right now, and it's going to transform everything about pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening who's in pharma, biotech, or even if you're in the investment world, this deep dive is a must listen. We're talking about speeding up how we develop new therapies, potentially cutting costs dramatically, and tackling diseases that have been stumping us for decades.
First things first, let's set anyone in this field knows that the traditional drug development process is a long and tough journey, billions of dollars, a decade or more to bring a new drug to market.
It's like climbing Mount Everest, blindfolded, with one hand tied behind your back. You might get there eventually, but it's going to be a painful and expensive climb.
Exactly, and that's because every single stage, from finding a target to optimizing a lead compound, is incredibly complex and resource intense. Think about it. You're basically looking for a needle in a haystack, testing millions of molecules just to find that one magic bullet.
And that's where AI comes in. Right?
Yeah.
It's like it's bringing these digital superpowers to sift through mountains of data, spot patterns that we as humans might completely miss, and just make the whole process way smarter and faster.
Right. It's like having a whole team of tireless research assistants working 24/7, analyzing everything, chemical structures, genomic data, clinical trial results, you name it. And it's especially helpful in areas like target identification and hit discovery, which are traditionally the most time-consuming and expensive stages.
Okay, so let's break this down a bit. Let's say we're trying to develop a brand new drug for, I don't know, Alzheimer's disease. Where does AI actually fit into all of this?
Well, imagine you've got this massive database, millions of molecules that could potentially be drugged. Now, instead of testing each one in a lab, which would take forever, AI algorithms can actually analyze the chemical structures of these molecules and then predict which ones are most likely to interact with the specific protein, the ones that are involved in Alzheimer's.
So it's like having this, I don't know, digital matchmaker pairing up drugs and targets based on their molecular profile.
Exactly. And that's what we call virtual screening, which saves an enormous amount of time and resources. Plus, AI can go even deeper than that. It can actually predict how a drug will behave in the body. It's ADM proper.
Absorption.
Distribution, metabolism, excretion, and toxicity.
Yes, ADM. The stuff that keeps medicinal chemists up at night. Understanding how a drug is processed in the body is, well, it's crucial. But it's so complex.
It really is. And traditionally, it involves a ton of trial and error, testing compounds in animals and then eventually humans. But AI can analyze huge data sets of existing drugs and their ADMT properties, and then learn to predict how a new drug will behave, all based on its chemical structure.
So it's almost like having a crystal ball. That can tell you if a drug is going to be safe and effective before you even start clinical trials.
Well, not quite a crystal ball. But AI is definitely getting better at these predictions. And that's because it's constantly learning from new data, refining it, and becoming more and more accurate all the time.
This is all pretty mind-blowing. I'm curious, though, what are some of the actual AI techniques being used in drug discovery? I know we've got things like support vector machines, random forests. These sound like something straight out of a computer science textbook.
They do, but don't worry, you don't need a PhD in math to understand the basics. Think of support vector machines, or SVM, as these really sophisticated pattern recognition tools. They're great at classifying data, like predicting whether a molecule is likely to be a drug or not.
It's like a digital sorting hat, separating the potential drugs from the duds.
Exactly. And then we have random forests, which are another powerful machine learning technique. Imagine a group of experts, each one making their own predictions based on their unique expertise. A random forest combines all those predictions from multiple decision trees, each one analyzing a different aspect of the data.
So it's kind of like a wisdom of the crowd approach, getting a more robust prediction by considering all these different perspectives.
Precisely. And random forests are especially good at predicting how strongly a drug will bind to its target, which is a crucial factor in how effective it will.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these different AI techniques kind of work together, but we can't talk about AI without talking about deep learning, which seems to be like the hottest topic in tech these days. What's all the hype about?
Deep learning is definitely getting a lot of attention, and for good reason. It's a more advanced form of AI that uses artificial neural networks, which are actually inspired by the structure of the human brain. These networks can analyze huge amounts of data, learning these complex patterns and relationships that we as humans would never be able to detect.
So SVMs are sorting hats and random forests are committees. Is deep learning like having a whole research department working on the problem?
That's a great analogy. Deep learning is incredibly powerful, and it's being used for everything, from identifying new drug targets to predicting drug efficacy to even coming up with entirely new drug designs.
Wow, that's incredible. It sounds like AI isn't just assisting researchers at this point, but potentially taking the lead in some aspects of drug discovery.
In many ways it is. AI is becoming absolutely essential for drug discovery, and its impact is only going to grow in the coming years.
This is all incredibly exciting, but it also brings up some big questions questions like, what does this mean for the future of the entire pharmaceutical industry? How is AI going to change how we develop and deliver new treatment? And what are some of the challenges that we need to address as this technology keeps evolving?
Those are all excellent questions, and we're going to explore them in much more depth in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into AI and drug discovery.
I'm still kind of blown away by everything we talked about last time. It's just wild to see AI. It's not just some futuristic concept. It's actually being used right now in labs and research centers all over.
It really is. And as we discussed, AI is being applied in so many different ways, from virtual screening to predicting those ADMAK properties. But let's dig a little deeper, shall we? Let's look at some specific examples, how these AI techniques are actually making a real difference. Let's get down to brass tacks. I'm really curious about how AI is being used to tackle, some of the biggest problems in the pharmaceutical industry, for example. We've all heard about the antibiotic resistance crisis. That's a ticking time bomb. Are there any promising developments there?
Definitely. Researchers are using AI to jumpstart the search for new antibiotics. Traditional ways of finding new antibiotics, well, they've been pretty slow. And a lot of times they come up with compounds that have all these nasty side effects, but AI is changing all that.
How so?
Well, picture this. You have a massive library, millions upon millions of chemical compounds, way too many to test by hand in a lab. So what can you do? You bring in AI, it can analyze the structures of these compounds, predict which ones are most likely to actually have antibacterial properties.
So it's like having this digital detective sifting through a mountain of clues to find the culprit, the one molecule that can take down those drug-resistant bacteria.
That's a perfect analogy. And you know what? This approach has already led to some amazing discoveries. Like back in 2020, some researchers at MIT, they used a deep learning algorithm and they found a brand new antibiotic, Halicin, which is effective against a whole bunch of drug-resistant bacteria.
Halicin. I remember reading about that. It's crazy to think that. Basically, an AI discovered a new antibiotic that could actually save who knows how many lives.
It really shows you the power of this technology. And Halicin's just one example. There are so many other AI-driven antibiotic discovery programs out there. It really gives us hope in this fight against antimicrobial resistance.
This is groundbreaking stuff. But AI isn't just for finding new drugs, right? It can also help us improve existing drugs and even find completely new uses for them.
You got it. Drug repurposing is what it's called. And it's a hot area where AI is really making waves. Instead of starting from scratch with a new drug, which is really expensive and takes forever, AI can help us figure out if any existing drugs might work against a different disease.
So it's kind of like, you have an old friend, and suddenly you realize they have all these hidden talents, skills and abilities you never even knew about.
Perfect way to put it. One amazing example of this is the DeepDTNet platform we touched on a little bit earlier. It's being used to find new targets for drugs that already exist, which could lead to new treatment options for diseases that don't have any good therapies, right?
I remember you mentioned DeepDTNet could help find new uses for cancer drugs. Can you tell me more about how that works?
Sure. DeepDTNet is a really sophisticated AI platform. It uses deep learning algorithms to analyze tons of data. We're talking chemical structures, genomic information, even phenotypic data. You know how cells respond to different drugs?
So it's like this, master detective, piecing together clues from all over the place to get a full picture.
Exactly. And DeepDTNet's already shown what it can do. It was actually used to find a new use for an existing cancer drug, topotecan. Turns out it's also effective against a certain type of immune receptor, one that plays a role in autoimmune.
Wow, so a drug that was originally developed for cancer could potentially be used to treat things like rheumatoid arthritis or even inflammatory bowel disease. That's remarkable.
It really is. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Drug repurposing has the potential to change how we treat all sorts of, and AI is a big part of making it happen.
This is all super exciting, but it also brings up some of those challenges we talked about before, especially the whole transparency thing with AI models. How can we be sure that these AI-powered platforms are making reliable predictions?
That's a really important question, and something researchers are working on right now. As AI gets more and more advanced, we need to understand how it's getting vision. We got to move away from that black box shit,
right,
where the AI spits out predictions, but we have no idea why.
Right. It's like you have this brilliant detective. They solve the case, but they can't tell you how they did it. You need that explanation to really trust their judgment.
Exactly. And there are some promising approaches being explored. One way is to develop new AI algorithms, ones that are more transparent by design. These algorithms are meant to show us a glimpse into their decision making, so it's easier for us to understand how they got to their conclusion.
So it's like the AI can show its work, not just the final answer. That would definitely make me more confident in its predictions.
Absolutely. Another way is to use something called explainable AI, or XAI for short. which basically aims to translate AI decisions into something we humans can understand. It's about developing tools and methods that can break down the complex reasoning of these AI models into simpler concepts that make sense to us.
So it's like having this translator, bridging the gap between AI language and human language.
That's a great way to think about it. And it's an area where there's a lot of research going on. New tools and techniques are popping up all the time. The goal is to make AI not just powerful, but also trustworthy, making sure its decisions are based on science.
This is all super promising. It seems like the whole field of AI-powered drug discovery is moving at lightning speed, with new breakthroughs happening left and right. But with all this potential, what are some of the challenges that are still out there? What roadblocks do we need to clear to really make the most of this technique?
That's a great question, and one that we'll be diving into in the final part of our dive.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into AI-powered drug discovery.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've seen how AI is really shaking things up. Everything from target identification to drug repurposing. It's like a breath of fresh air for the pharmaceutical industry.
Absolutely. But like with any powerful technology, there are always challenges. We've talked about needing transparency in AI models. But what other hurdles do we need to overcome to really unlock the full potential of AI in drug discovery?
Well, one big one is data. It's the fuel that powers AI.
Right. You can't train an AI on nothing.
Exactly. AI algorithms are only as good as the data we feed them. And in drug discovery, we need massive amounts of high-quality data to train these algorithms properly.
So what kind of data are we talking about here?
Everything. Chemical structures, genomic information, clinical trial data, even patient records. The more data we can give these AI models, the better they get at making accurate predictions.
But I imagine gathering and organizing all that data, that's a huge task.
Oh, it's massive. It requires a lot of collaboration between researchers, pharmaceutical companies, even government agents. We need standardized format, robust data sharing platforms, and clear guidelines for data privacy and security.
Speaking of data privacy, that's another big challenge, right?
All right.
Especially when we're dealing with sensitive patient information.
Absolutely. It's a balancing act. We need to make data accessible for research, but also protect people's privacy.
It's like walking a tightrope. How are we tackling this challenge?
Well, there are some promising approaches. One is something called federated learning, where the AI models are trained on data that's spread out across multiple locations instead of being all lumped together in one central spot.
So the data stays where it is, but the AI can still learn from it.
Exactly. It's like sending the AI algorithm on a world tour, visiting different data sets, gathering insights, without ever actually moving the data itself.
That's pretty clever. Any other strategies?
Yeah, another one is differential privacy. That's where you add a little bit of carefully calculated noise to the data. It protects individual privacy, but it still keeps the overall statistical properties of the data intact.
So it's like adding some static to a radio signal. You can still hear the music, but you can't make out the individual notes.
Precisely. These techniques are constantly being improved, and they're really important for building trust in AI-powered drug discovery.
It sounds like we're making good progress. But what about the human side of all this? Are we going to see robots replacing scientists in the lab?
Not at all. AI is a very powerful tool, but still just a tool. It's meant to help us, not replace us.
So it's more of a partnership, humans and machines working together.
Exactly. We still need science to design experiments, interpret results, and make those critical decisions. AI just helps us do the heavy lifting so scientists can focus on the more creative and strategic parts of drug discovery.
That makes sense. So looking ahead, what does the future hold for AI-powered drug discovery? What kind of breakthroughs can we expect to see?
The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing. We're right on the edge of this new era of personalized medicine, where treatments are tailored to each patient's unique genetic makeup and lifestyle.
So no more one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. AI will help us develop drugs that are more effective, with fewer side effects, which means better outcomes for patients.
And what about those diseases that have always seemed impossible to cure, like Alzheimer's and cancer?
AI is giving us new hope in those areas by analyzing those complex biological paths and identifying new drug targets. AI could help us develop breakthrough therapies that we never thought possible before.
It's like having a secret weapon in our fight against disease.
It really is. And this is just the beginning. The next 10 years are going to be incredibly exciting for drug discovery, with AI leading the charge.
This has been an amazing deep dive. We've covered so much, from the nitty-gritty of AI algorithms to the big picture implications of this technology for the future of healthcare.
And it's clear that AI is going to completely change the way we discover,
develop, and deliver new treatments, bringing hope to people all over the world.
To all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep learning about the incredible future of medicine is being shaped right now, and AI is playing a huge...
Stay curious, stay engaged, and be part of this revolution.
This is The Deep Dive, signing off.